Start it off, Jeremy. We're live.
Okay, we're live, so welcome everybody. I hope that Kim joins us, but unfortunately Bailey won't be joining us today. But we're recording, and we'll be putting this video up for Bailey to watch too. We'd like to start by everyone introducing themselves. Should we go from the left? Jason?
Yeah, it's very interesting that in alphabetical order we don't start until the J's. But go ahead, Jason.
Okay, my name's Jason Keane. I'm from London. I first came to Japan in 2002. I was on the JET program for 2 years. I lived in Shiga. I went back to London. My background is in computers. I came to Hiroshima about 4 years ago because I wanted to teach again and do more with the Japanese language. Yeah, and so I've been doing translation work for on and off for about 6 months. But I'd like to delve deeper into it. I've spent a lot of time studying kanji. I really love kanji. So if any of you are kanji enthusiasts, we can talk all day. Thank you. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I notice you have JLPT 2 and Kanji Kante level 2. All these qualifications. I have absolutely nothing in that respect. Okay, next, Jennifer.
Oh, it's me. Hi. My name's Jennifer. I'm British, but I live in the US. I've been studying Japanese for probably about 11-ish years, but when I started, I was really lazy, so it took me a long time to learn the basics. But I went to Japan for the first time after 2 years of studying it, and instead of going to all the touristy places, I went out into the countryside and did WOOF, the Worldwide Organization of Organic Farms. And so that pushed me in the deep end, so I had to get good at speaking really quickly, which is fantastic. And I just fell in love with the language. And so when I went to university, I studied anthropology with a year in Japan at Kent University. And then when I was so I studied at Kansai Gaidai in Osaka and made the mistake of falling for an American who I'm now married to, which is why I live in America. He can speak Japanese as well, which is fantastic, although not to the same level as somebody who was a Japanese native, but still. So yeah, I just fell in love with the language and realized that anthropology was kind of useless unless you wanted to be an anthropologist or a spy. So I followed the Japanese route. And after realizing, I started working for an American company because they wanted someone to work in their Japan office. But when I got to America, it turns out they didn't actually have a Japan office. They needed to set one up. So I didn't end up going to live in Japan, unfortunately, because I realized how expensive it was to open an office in Japan either. So that all fell through. And that's when I did my MA in translation at SOAS, because I wanted to keep using the language and I wanted to learn translation to try and get a useful skill. And then was disappointed with the MA. So I've kind of been fumbling about with translation and really trying to get into it. And it's only recently that it's really started. I feel like it's really started to pick up, and I really want to take it further and really hone this. So I'm really excited about this program and working with other people. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
By the way, I also studied social anthropology at LSE. It was a 2-year master's program. Yeah, I studied zoology undergraduate and social anthropology graduate level, which made me one of the most unemployable people in Great Britain. And that's why I came to Japan. Okay, next, Jessica.
Okay. So I'm from Washington State originally. I studied Asian studies at Whitman College. And then after graduation, I came to Japan to teach English. I taught children's English conversation for 3 years in Aichi Prefecture, then was a kindergarten teacher for 3 years. And while teaching, I was studying Japanese. And I took the Japanese language proficiency test, N2 and N1 during that time. And then I wanted to do something with my Japanese. So when I met my spouse, and we got married last year, but we moved together to Tokyo 2 years ago. So then I found a job at an engineering consulting company where I'd be able to do translation, even though I didn't really have much experience with it. It's been a learning experience, figuring out how to research things and do translation on my own without coworkers I could really rely on for proofreading and stuff. So I started last September at University of Portsmouth doing the MA Translation Studies course there. And it's been pretty good so far for my translation, I think.
That's Portsmouth in England, right?
Yes.
That's a distance course then.
Yeah, it's a 3-year part-time distance learning course. So everything's on message boards for the most part, and then have access to their library for all the reading.
Okay, thank you very much. Jessica, by the way, was a runner-up in the JAT translation competition. Came second. Okay, Richard.
Oh, I see. On my own screen, I'm always to the right. Everybody is always on the far right, and then so I didn't realize. Let's see, my self-intro is I came to Japan like in my junior year of college, not speaking a word of Japanese, and I've lived in Japan ever since. So originally I spent 2 years as a college student, and then I taught some English. Actually, other things like worked on an organic farm, studied Aikido, like the woofer that we have in Jennifer. And then I studied, I saw something in the newspaper that said if you're going to go back to your home country, just being able to speak Japanese would not be enough to get any kind of job. So, you really got to learn to read. And after seeing that, I studied with the Kumon program, which is for kids, right? It's a Juku type of thing. And they had some kind of foreign, in Kobe where I was living, a class for foreigners where they just gave a cheat sheet of the kanji and the hiragana. And this is a time before you could look up everything online. And we had to look up everything in the Span Haramitsuki, or that had just come out, which was revolutionary because you could look up the second kanji in the compound. Anyway, I went to the first iJet, and when I had just started out translating, I kind of said a friend of mine introduced me, and that really opened my eyes. iJet was really cool. People just standing up in the audience and saying, giving their opinions and I thought, this is something I could do. I like to work. I'm self-motivated. I like to, sit at home and not have so much of a difference between. Difference is not the right word, but going to an office or something. I work at home, and so if my cat comes and bothers me, I'll pick him up and show you. And so home life and work life is much more integrated and can step outside for a break, take a nap anytime. I love being freelance and been working J2E with agencies for all of this time in general translation.
Okay, thanks very much.
Sure.
Next we have Stephen Christensen, I think. You're on next.
Am I the next one?
Yep.
Okay. So my name's Stephen Christensen. I was born in Salt Lake City, Utah, in the US, and that's actually where I spent the majority of my life until I got to Japan. I started studying Japanese when I was in, I guess, end of middle school. I had some close friends. I still have those close friends, very, very into Japanese culture, and so I was kind of drawn into that, and we all grew up on the, Super Nintendo generation and stuff like that. And so it all seemed very, cool to get familiarized with. And when I got into high school, we had to take a second language, and it just so happened that my high school offered Japanese, and it was a tremendously popular class. The other languages were Spanish and German and French, but Japanese culture had been around for long enough at that point that the fact that Japanese was offered was this huge draw. And that first year class, I think there were probably 120 or 150 students, split into separate periods, of course. But there was a huge number of students in that first year Japanese class. And then by the time you got to second year and people realized that you had to learn the hiragana and you had to learn the katakana and you had to learn the kanji, and there was a huge drop-off rate. And by second year Japanese, there were maybe 20 or 30 kids in the class. And so we all started becoming really, really close, that group. And around the end of high school, we had exchange students that would come to our school every year in the summer for just a couple of weeks. And I heard about a program through the person who organized that exchange where you could go back to Japan, students from the US, students from Utah. And so that was my very first time coming to Japan, was a little 2-week program going around the country. And I became really interested in doing a study abroad after that. And so at the end of high school, I did a year abroad in Gifu Prefecture in Ogaki City. And then I came back to the US and did a BA in Japanese. And as part of that BA, I also did another year. My university happened to have a relationship with Gifu University. And so I went back again to Gifu for another year. And then after I finished university, I was kind of floundering around with what I was going to do professionally after that. And I'd taken the JLPT one several times at that point, and I had not passed. And so that was kind of my next step when I got out of university, is I was really determined to pass the N1. And so I went and stayed with a friend in Tokyo for a few months and just studied every day and took the N1 there. And while I was there, just kind of like a message board, somebody popped up and said that they had that there was this little city in Nagano. Who is it that's living in Nagano in this group? Somebody. It's not coming on to me at the second. But anyways, so the Board of Education in this little city in Nagano might be hiring, was this message. And so I thought, well, I don't know what I'm going to do next. And so I went in there and I applied, and that's how I started working in Japan. And I was there as an ALT for a couple of years. And then after that, I came to Hiroshima and worked at a private school here for about 6 years.
You don't remember the name of the town in Nagano?
It was Ida. So
Ida.
A little bit is Jeremy, are you based in Nagano?
Yeah, I'm in a town called Fujimi, which is near Suwa.
Okay, right. Yeah, so I remember you mentioning that in the thread, and I looked it up on a map. So yeah, I was a bit farther down south from you in Ida. And anyways, so I came to Hiroshima, and that was a pretty intense period of Japanese language learning. And as part of my classes, I would set little goals with my students, and then I would do a goal along with them. And so I started doing the Kanken levels and things like that, and started getting a bit better at Japanese, and decided that I was interested in trying translation. And so I started freelancing my last year at the school, just kind of part-time, and then last year in 2017, I started doing full-time. So that's about it, I guess.
Thank you very much. And in fact, Stephen won the Jap translation competition. So we have a winner and number 2. But despite winning the Jap translation competition, Stephen, you still have to get Kanken 2, right?
I do not have Kanken 2 yet. I've taken Kanken 2, I think, 5 or 6 times at this point. So
you need to get together with Jason.
I know, Jason. We need to have a study party because I'm impressed.
I've got loads of books. I mean, I passed it on my second go. So
really, oh my gosh,
I almost lost my sanity. So
that's incredible. Yeah, I would love to talk about like your study methods and stuff like that sometime.
Absolutely, absolutely, anytime.
I kind of want to know
Okay, next up, Stephen Perrow.
Hi. I guess I'm the other Stephen. Perrow's just fine if you want to call me Perrow. That's cool. So I'm originally from Ohio, U.S. I actually started taking Japanese technically in high school. So like when I was in high school, I was able to take classes at the local university, the University of Akron. Up there. So I took Japanese there for 2 years and found out they didn't have a Japanese major. So I had enough credits when I was done to study abroad. So I actually went to Kansai Gaidai, which I think Jennifer mentioned.
Yeah.
It's so funny. It's a small world. So I was originally an English major. I wanted to do something like editing or I don't know. But I studied a lot of literature, and so when I got to Japan, I started studying Japanese literature, and I found that I really liked that, and I really wanted to make Japanese my main focus. So when I came back to America, I transferred to Seattle, to the University of Washington. So I went there, studied for about like 2.5 years. I just got so I have a creative writing and just regular BA in Japanese language and literature. But I took a lot of translation courses as much as I could. And I took some independent study translation courses where I kind of like, I worked one-on-one with the teacher and stuff like that. So yeah, I only just recently graduated last year. So I don't know, I feel like my spoken Japanese is getting super rusty. So I'm trying to find a way to get back to Japan and start I'm kind of in the floundering stage right now, but I want to get to Japan and kind of start my life and then start working on translation and hopefully make it like a full-time thing.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you.
Next, Tamara.
Hi, my name is Tamara Latham Sprinkle. It's a bit of a mouthful. I started studying Japanese just for fun in high school because I had quite a few friends who were interested in Japanese culture, but I also was very interested in the kanji characters, kind of like Jason. So I found it, I studied maybe 5 different, well, formally I studied 4 languages in high school. 4 languages in high school, and then I studied Japanese on my own. I did high school and my BA in Minnesota, where I'm originally from. I live in Chicago now. So at St. Cloud State, I did a global studies major, and then I also majored in linguistics. I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to both job history and studies. But I did, one of the reasons I picked the university I did was that I could study abroad at least once or twice. So I studied abroad at Akita University for about a year, which was a really good experience because there were 4 options I could have done, but that was the only one that you had to learn Japanese in order to go. And I had quite a few classes that were in Japanese. I was the only American there, and I was really forced to use Japanese in a way that I wouldn't have if I had picked an international university. So I was very happy with going there, and I really enjoyed that experience. And I took and passed N2 while I was there. Since then, I've taken N1 once, and I failed that. So basically, after I graduated, I taught English actually in Korea because I made a lot of Korean friends in Japan, and I thought it would be interesting to see the difference between the 2 countries. And then I was a bit floundering, like what I wanted to do with life, and then I chose to do the MA in Japanese translation at SOAS. And I don't think I had as negative an experience as Jen did, but I did think there were certain things that were lacking in that program, particularly with just sort of understanding how to become a full-time freelancer, how to become a translator in general, and also translating more of the type of genres that there are actually jobs in. So basically I graduated with that, and I've been doing some freelance translation for about 4 years. I worked as like an administrator / like interpreter at an automotive factory in Lake City, Minnesota. And I discovered technical interpreting is not for me while I was there. And I've also done some like proofreading at a translation company as well. And right now I'm doing more freelance translation, but I'm trying to build up a client base and just potentially like direct clients so I could go full-time freelance, because I'm kind of torn. I like stability, but I also like independence, and I don't know if I'm the best full-time worker in the world because I'm very self-motivated, but yeah, so I'm also kind of floundering about what I want to do. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Okay, thank
Great.
you very much, Tamara.
Did you say Akita University, Tamara?
Yeah.
Akita had a MSU there too. That would be. Did you ever hear that MSU Akita? No.
It sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not sure. MSU Akita.
Oh, okay, never mind. That's all right.
What is MSU Akita?
I think the program's now defunct, so I'll have to look it up later. I had an old professor who was working there, but not anymore.
I know they have a really good Japanese linguistic program because I have one friend from Kenya that she completed her master's there.
Okay. Are we going to have an introduction from Shu?
Oh, I was not expecting to be called upon to introduce myself, but
Why not?
Some 7 or 8 or 9 years ago, that I was called upon by then just President to act as a Japanese language checker for the eJuku, the session which was held at that time. Then I was asked to act as the coordinator for the eJuku sessions because I was very good at it. Actually, I wouldn't like to say bad things about my predecessors, but most other eJuku coordinators were lazy. They didn't put up any announcements. They didn't reply to any inquiries from those people who are interested in eJuku. But I do all the tours, very quickly. Whenever I get a letter inquiry from any of you, I just reply it within a matter of few minutes. Perhaps you were impressed with the speed with which I reacted to. And when somebody wouldn't respond to me, I sent reminders to those people many times, several times a day. Oh, that's a joke. But anyway, my job here is to take care of those janitor types of work. And I'm called a super janitor because I'm very good at what I do as a janitor. But really, when discussion starts, I wear my hat as the Japanese language checker. And usually I look at the Japanese side of translation, that is comprehension of the source text. But sometimes Jeremy and Richard can read the text more closely and correctly than I do. And so I think I would limit myself to the role of super janitor anyway. And that's much safer. And just one point about my English learning journey, so to speak. I studied English very hard in Japan. And at age around 25, 27, or 30, I became a full-time English-Japanese conference interpreter. And until that time, I had not have any meaningful lengthy stays in any foreign countries or English-speaking countries. So I boast about this experience. You don't have to go abroad to learn a foreign language. If I would, there are many Japanese who speak excellent English. They went to the United States, for example, took graduate school courses in their fields of specialty, and they come back to Japan with excellent proficiency in English. And if you ask them how they studied English, they would say, well, they were given a lot of reading assignments in many of the classes they had taken, and then they had to read many books at their desk in their dormitory rooms, many hours every day. And what I did was to read many English books at my desk, in my room, in my home. So the secret of learning a foreign language to a high extent is to be exposed to the language as much as possible. Well, at least on the written, as far as written language is concerned, that's true. But my weakness is on the spoken English side. Typically, I do not understand dirty jokes in drinking places where JAT members, native speaking JAT members, have casual conversations. And one final point about my English. My English is 99% Japanese. Maybe 1% slightly American. That's
well,
all.
Thank you, Shu. We're very grateful that you are super vigilant as a super janitor. I had no idea that super meant great. It was like, I thought like superintendent or supervising or something. So, but anyway, I think that the janitor is too low a title. So with the super attached to it, maybe it balances out.
Mm-hmm. Well,
also, one point is that it's different learning English, going abroad or not, versus learning Japanese. You need to have some experience in Japan. Wouldn't you guys agree? Because it's such a context-based language.
Definitely.
That's very true. And that's the difficulty most young Japanese encounter when they get hired at Japanese companies. When they join the companies in the new offices, they don't understand or communicate very well with their superiors. When the superior says something, then the young guy just don't get the message. And also when they talk with their customers and clients at other companies, they sometimes misunderstand the sales messages coming from them too. Actually, I worked at one of the biggest Japanese trading houses, and in my department, we had a lot of business relations with shipping companies and manufacturers and so on. There's sometimes, well, once I asked my counterpart at the manufacturing company if we are getting the contracts from them because all the arrangements have been made. But then the guy on the other side just told me, well, actually, we sent you some note or some, document, something, which was not contract, but it was just a simple memo. But
Shoot. I want to get back to translation for everybody. Do you have a quick point to make?
I'm sorry. Yes. So even Japanese have difficulty communicating with other Japanese when they're fresh in the real world. They have to learn how to talk and communicate in Japanese. And so in Japanese, as you said, pointed out aptly, Richard, Japanese is very highly high context language. It's not only your problem with people studying Japanese abroad, but even for Japanese young people.
Yeah, so I think we have a very strong group here. Really, really strong, don't you think, Jeremy?
Yeah, very strong. I'm I feel somewhat inferior, actually. With all these MAs and JLPTs and Kanji Kentes and so on. Yeah, respect.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know how relevant my experience is because it's, I was in your position one generation ago, right? 25 plus years ago. But I don't know how much things have changed in these 3 decades. You still have agencies that are getting work from end clients, major clients, and these agencies are translation agencies, and they farm out work to individual freelancers. How much has changed? I don't know. But just to give you a point on the graph, when I started, I only had the the proficiency test level 2. And then I got started in translation, and I didn't even feel the need to go for 1, much less an MA. So that's just a point on the graph.
Yeah. In my case, I guess I should also do a little self-introduction.
Yes, please.
I came to Japan way back in 1976, and as I said, I spent the first 7 years in the Hokkaido countryside. And so right from the start, I was down in the trenches. I had some old U.S. Army texts that I learned from. That's what I used to study kanji, and I could write a lot more kanji in those days than I can ever do now. I don't even write English, handwrite English. Anyway, I was working in television because I was staying at this guy. He's a famous Japanese animal writer, and he started having his own TV program in 1980. And so I started working on that as a sort of coordinator, eventually an associate producer, and I'd be going overseas to find interesting animal topics to film, maybe 7 or 8 times a year. I met my wife there too, and eventually, when she got pregnant, we moved out of the so-called animal kingdom and spent 9 years down in Funabashi, because she was originally from Chiba Prefecture, Chiba City, and then we moved to the Japanese to the Nagano countryside here back in 1992. So we've been here now for about 25 years. 4 kids, all grown up and flown the coop. I have a daughter in London with three grandkids. Son in Montreal, who's a pilot. Another daughter in Kyoto. She's a music teacher, married to a Canadian international school teacher, Doshisha International School. And my youngest son, who's just bumming around most of the time, making organic vegetables at the moment, or he spends winter making kanten, if you know what that is, agar. And
agar.
Yeah. And so it's just the 2 of us now with our dog and 2 cats and field. So we farm while I translate. That's about it. But I too have noticed, I started translating when the TV program finished in 2000. I started translating full time. My kids were coming up to high school, and they were going to international school in India, and high school and college. And I needed a lot of money in a hurry, and so this seemed the easiest way. Television. There's no money in television, really. And I guess I was just lucky. I joined JAT and followed all the mailing lists, Honyaku and the JAT mailing list, which was very, very active at that time. And I learned a hell of a lot from that, and made some contacts. And so I never, within about 3 months, I was already earning quite a lot. And so I never really felt the need for any qualifications of the kind that you now have. So I get the impression that now it's a tougher world in general for young people than it was at that time, and that's probably what goads you to sort of go and get the extra qualifications, the MAs and the Kankens and so on. And I have a lot of respect. I think you're working a lot harder than I ever did to get into this profession. And anyway, I hope I can help in some way. That's about it.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. I'd like to open up the floor for questions. You might be, anything business, like getting started in translation or anything at all. It's your time. We have 22 minutes.
For the experienced translators, I've got one, if that's all right. So did most of your work come through agencies then, as opposed to direct clients?
Okay, I'll start. And I got to know an agent through I think the JAP mailing list. I made a careless comment in response to somebody's question, and this guy, he's an American, he sort of pulled me over the coals for that, said, no, you're wrong, and so on. So I thanked him, sent a private email to him, thanking him for setting me right and teaching me in one fell swoop what an exacting profession this is. And he must have liked my email, because he said, I'll give you a tryout and with a short job, maybe sometime. And the next week he sent me a short job, and he liked my stab at it, and started supplying me with substantial amounts of work. So that's how I got in. And having work on the side while you're sort of approaching other agencies and so on, it's very nice to have that kind of stability. Right. Anyway, I gradually made contacts with other agencies. But after about 2 years, I think it was a public relations company that got in touch with me through JAT. They had seen my profile, and they'd sent a number of people emails asking them to sort of sit a trial. And so I did the trial, and I got there, and that was my first direct client. And I'm still working for them, and they virtually paid for me to paid for my kids' international school and university tuition and living expenses. And so I'm very grateful. And now I've added another direct client, and now 80% of my work is between that PR company and the other direct client is a Nagano machine manufacturer. And it's definitely the way to go. But it's something that it's not something that you can sort of do intentionally. We have to stick to stick at it, I think, and wait for the opportunity to come up. And of course, working for direct clients means that you have to be available all the time, which is quite tough. You know, I'm going to England and Italy in May for some time, family time with my daughter and her family. And but I'm going to have to be on tap 24 hours, especially with my direct clients. And so it's difficult to actually get right away from the job. So they're both pros and cons.
Yeah, so there are two questions. Thank you, Jeremy. There are two issues here. One is getting clients, and the other is direct clients versus agencies. What Jeremy just mentioned is that direct clients pay well, but you're on call all the time. And agencies, you can just turn them down if you have an established relationship, and they'll understand and then come back to you later. Or you turn down a small job and they'll come back with a bigger job. So networking is the one thing I wanted to stress is the important thing, because a lot of the time when you're, as Jeremy also said, through the JET list or conferences, meeting people, this is when somebody says, you know, I'm not going to be able to handle this anymore. Are you interested? Shall I introduce you to my client? That's the way really you get the strongest connection to a client that I've found. Word of mouth.
In fact, my job for my Nagano machine maker, that was also through another translator I met through JAT. And then we sort of met because he was living in Nagano too. He met at a couple of events, so he knew me personally. And when he was working for that company, and when he decided to go into something else, he passed the job on to me. Very grateful. I also passed work on to him, and that's how it happens. And I've had I've attended sort of JAT meetings in Tokyo, and got friendly with various other translators, and they've got in touch when they have a big workload and given me work. And that network, as Richard says, such networking is very important. So I do recommend, we've got an iJet coming up in Osaka. If any of you can make it, then I think...
do we have a show of hands who already is determined to go to iJet? Okay. And I'd just like to add that I think it should be mentioned that networking is not the only way to get jobs. You can also answer trials and things like that. I worked for a company named Babel in Tokyo for many years, not anymore, but that came through a trial that they were advertising, you know, freelance translators. So it's always good to pursue leads, not exactly cold calling, but if you know that if they put out some kind of feelers, a company, then certainly answer that. And the big problem will be what rate you're willing to accept. There was some recent call that came through JAT, and they said 6 yen per word. And I said, my standard rate is not per word. I'm sorry, per character, Japanese character. So that would be, well, I said my standard rate is 10 yen, which is you figure 400 characters per standard page is 4,000 yen a page. If you're figuring English, then it would be 200 word page, about 4,000 yen. So when they said 6, I said 10. They said, we'll think about it. Haven't really heard back since then. But that's okay.
One thing that is gradually coming in is agencies using translation memory, cloud-based translation memory. I use translation memory software myself, but the other day I was asked by an agency, probably Japan's biggest agency. I do very little work for them, but they wanted me to use this online thing called MemSource, which looks quite similar to the cat soft that I use, which is MemoQ. But for the amount of work they supply, I really didn't feel like obliging, so I said no. I'll take a rain check on this. By the way, speaking of jobs, you probably know that JAT has a job board as well on its site. I've just posted it up on the chat function here. That's worth looking at occasionally, just in case any of you are not aware of it.
I don't know if I'm aware of it. There used to be something that came through Adam Rice's Honyaku homepage or something.
Nothing like that now. No, this apparently quite a few people have got work through the job board. Yeah, so it's worth looking at, checking out occasionally. Okay. Unfortunately, I tried to see if you can get a feed into your email from it, but it doesn't seem possible. So you have to go to the site to check it out.
Maybe set up an RSS feed, Jeremy?
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say about networking, just because I'm one of those people who can't really afford to fly to Japan every year to go to all the iJets, although I'd love to. But what I found really useful is going on Twitter. And I know that's more of a new thing, but when I started translating, I started finding other translators on Twitter who are doing the same thing as me, and then I've become really good friends with them, and now we recommend work to each other when it comes up, or warn each other when a company's not doing very good practices, so we can avoid that kind of thing. So I think that's a good way to network if you can't get out to all the major events.
Yeah, these days you're not limited by geographical location at all, as this video conference testifies to.
Well, that's very interesting. I didn't realize that Twitter could be used that way, but sure, why not? That's great.
By the way, when I started out, the JAT list and Honyaku, they were really, really active, and you learned a lot every day just from reading. But since we've had social media come in, Facebook and Twitter and so on, mailing lists have sort of gone out of fashion, and they're not really nearly as active as they used to be. We do have a group on Facebook of Japanese to English translators. Lots of people migrated there from the mailing lists, and there's lots of interesting discussions held there. You have to be invited to the group, so sometime during the course of this eJuku, I'll ask if any of you are interested, and I could sign you on.
Any other questions?
I have one. How can you find, because I've had pretty iffy experiences with translation agencies, mostly ones that will do like a bajillion languages and will be like, we're doing this super fast and super cheap for you. So normally they're not that good in terms of work or pay. So how can I find good agencies who actually have work and who pay not terribly?
Yeah, that's the perennial question, isn't it? And finding the thing is, yeah, you have to establish a good relationship. And at the beginning, you don't know what's going to happen. Very first contact. I don't really have any specific advice. Sometime during this course, I will look up a URL. As Jeremy has said, if you're active on some kind of boards where people see your name by answering questions or intelligently discussing something, then there's a chance that you have contact in that way. But yeah, I will post something. People say Prose is one place, but I've never been on it. PROZ discussion board. But there is a place that I'll put on where you can put up your bio and get contacted by agencies that troll it, so to speak. Okay, patrol it.
Well, actually, having your profile up on JAT also helps. I got my golden client through joining JAT and having my profile up there. I was particularly at that time. It was a sort of listed in alphabetical order, and with my name Angel, I always sat right near the top, and so I was really lucky, I think. Yeah. Finding agencies that are willing to pay top dollar for quality work is not that easy, and a lot of agencies that I used to work for have gone down market, especially since the Lehman shock, and you got these online places like MyGengo. Have you heard of that one? Which kind of really dredging the bottom. But there are people out there looking for and willing to pay money for a good translation. And there are agencies too that really care. And the thing is to find them. But you have to start somewhere. So start at the bottom, but keep on looking for opportunities. And then you can replace the cheap ones with people willing to pay better.
Yes. Can I interject, Jeremy?
Yep.
Yeah, a kind of a rule of thumb in the industry is that you can't really raise your rates on an agency or on a client in general. So if so you do have to look for new clients that will pay higher, but often you do have to start somewhere, and sometimes you'll find some kinds of work you do it for the experience, and it's okay if it's low paying, and also if you get faster through the act of translating, which you will, then the same rate will be a whole lot more profitable to you. So basically, our recommendation is to set a timer as you translate if you're a freelancer, and figure out how much time you're putting in for how many words out, or how many Japanese characters in. So I always keep track of that, and so you can see what your hourly rate is. Often, I don't know if that's obviously necessarily, so that's why I wanted to mention it. You get a per page rate or per word or per character rate. It's not always the end, the best paying. A high rate is not necessarily the best. It could be a very difficult project versus something that's easier, and you have maybe copy and paste that you can do a lot, and lower paying. It turns out better for you in terms of you know, how much time you put in for what you get. Was that the question?
No, but it answers questions. Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose along those lines, I was wondering, like, do you have any other kind of tips or, like, you know, techniques or something that, you know, like setting a timer that we may not be doing now, but would be a good practice to get into?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Setting a timer. Then you always have to decide, you know, are you going to count this research? Yeah, if you're looking up terms, yes. But then if you find it interesting and you follow it on the net.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
Yeah. Do you include it? When do you stop the timer? Yeah. So it's just general. I'm sure we'll come to tips and tricks, and you can ask any time on the board. We haven't gotten. We're getting close to the to wrapping up, actually, and not so much discussion, except for the self intros and a bit here and there. But one thing, this time we're not going to be discussing the text, the source text, because you haven't translated or submitted it yet. Neither have I, actually. But the second video conference, as a wrap up to our messaging boards, will be, you know, for any unanswered questions. Excuse me for a second.
So Shu,
Yes.
do you have any messages, any sort of janitor type stuff to communicate to?
Of course, I do. One of the most important things for us right now is to fix the due date for the submission of your translations. And perhaps some of you might have already started translating the source text, and some are going to start translating it from now on. But anyway, we have to decide when all the translations should be sent in. In the letter to participants I wrote, I mentioned the end of March, late March. And late March can mean any date in the last 10 days of March. But anyway, I might suggest March the 30th as the due date for the transmission of your translations. Of course, you can start earlier than that, and you can submit your translations earlier than that due date. And in that case, here's one interesting article in the letter to participants about what you are not supposed to do. Let me read it. When the translation submission due date draws nearer, some participants will be uploading their translations ahead of you while you are still translating. We trust you not to pick at each other's translation until you have submitted your own. So I propose to fix the date for submission at March the 30th, and anybody can submit your translation earlier than that. And I hope this stipulation will be honored, not pick at each other's translation. Okay? How about this? March the 30th.
That's good.
Yeah,
Good.
that's good with me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 30th Japan time, so 29th for
And,
US based
so,
participants.
if I would say midnight, March the 30th, you don't know. Actually, March the
Right.
30th or April the 1st. And let me say, March 30th, 23:59. Okay?
On time.
Before April
Okay.
1st comes. And April 1st is not a very good date as a due date. You know, everybody can cheat it.
Because you didn't really mean it if you said it on April 1st, right?
Mhm.
Or any time before then.
Yeah, anytime before. Because Jeremy will be preparing a big Excel sheet where audio translations will be broken up into paragraphs or sentences and neatly arranged in the table format with matrix, the people and sections or sentences for easy comparison. And if all of you send your translations the Saturday evening, that would be too much of a work to do for Jeremy. So let's level evenly the workload for Jeremy. Okay.
Okay, so it's now on the hour, and maybe we can wrap up. I was thinking that Jeremy, maybe you can just cut off the recording at this point. This will be the end of the official session, but if